Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here on this Tuesday. Tuesday, the 24th of October, 2023. Thank you for tuning in. I've never seen anything like this before. I don't think anybody has. I've never seen a setup better if you wanted to bring about if it's what you wanted, to bring about an enormous financial catastrophe and the nuclear world war simultaneously. This is the setup. And if something doesn't break, if this continues, it's kind of like certain things in life are like a no-brainer, right? If you were to take the check valve off of your air compressor and cap it and turn your air compressor on and just let it chug away until the tank, and it's got 100 pounds in it. Now it's got 150. Now it's got 200. Now it's got 220 pounds. What's going to happen? The tank's going to explode. That's a no-brainer. And this is a no-brainer. The pressure's building. The financial system is being, well, that's how money's created in the financial system, is the banks, they make loans. You have to keep extending and growing the debt. Otherwise, the system implodes. Just like the tank blows up on an air compressor. Or on a steam boiler. The economy will implode if it doesn't constantly have new money to pay off the old debt. And how's new money created? It's loaned into existence. And why is it loaned into existence? Because interest rates have to be low enough for it to be loaned into existence. This is how the really rich make their money, is they borrow money on almost 0% interest. But that's gone. The 0% interest is gone. The interest rates are going up. And it's all the Fed's doing. The Fed controls that. But then we have these people who also control the war theater out there, the leaders who control that. And they're hell-bent on the same thing as the Fed's bent on. Stirring up conflict. Why now? Possibly. I don't have all the answers to that. Why now? But I do know if we continue on in this direction that we're moving, it's going to lead to something that is beyond not pretty. Two things coming together at exactly the same time, guys. A financial calamity worldwide and war. And this is the age of nuclear. Plus, they got all these other weapons. So let's take a look at some of these articles. Let's get in here real quick, now that I had that little discussion with you guys, because we're heading down a very, very, very dark road. All of humanity is. The IRS is proposing unprecedented data collection on crypto users. The money's drying up in the system. That's why I just told you about an unprecedented financial disaster if this keeps on. And it's going to keep on as long as the Fed stays the course. And so they're squeezing the money out of the system, and now they're coming for every last drop that they can get. But it ain't going to help, because the amount that they need far outweighs what little bit that they're going to squeeze out. This is like, when you squeeze a lemon out, and you get it really, say a guy come along and he was a weightlifter and he squeezed your lemon for you. It's like trying to get the last drop. It ain't gonna amount to that much. It ain't gonna help in the long run scheme of things. It's just them straining at a gnat at this point. swallowing a camel and straining at a gnat. What would help is really, we embarked on this road a long time ago in 1914 when the Fed came along, and they've started this monetary Ponzi scheme, and now we're reaching the conclusion of it. And once you start on an endeavor like this, once you start quantitative easing, you can't quit. It's the monetary roach motel, and if you do quit, you're going to destroy the world as we know it. And this is the road they embarked on when the Fed started this last tightening cycle. And they're not quitting. They're staying the course. But when they do decide, hey, this is too much for us, it might be too late. A day late and a dollar short. Have you ever heard that saying? So they're going to run around now, and they're going to try to find every last person that has a crypto wallet and try to squeeze every last penny they can out of this dying economy. And it's dying because no new loans are being made by the banks. Credit is stiffening up so tight. So how do you fix all this? Well, you loosen up credit. You create a whole once you're on this endeavor, there is no going back. You have to continue forward or you die. Or the system dies. But they've decided they're not going to continue forward. So now is the time they need to shift gears and get out of this mess. But they're not going to. And this is the same thing with the war. They need to shift gears right now and get out of this mess. Back off. But they're not going to. Just like they're not going to on this. And until after the disaster. The biggest disaster the world has ever seen is coming right away. I can't begin to emphasize to you guys just how dangerous the situation is. This article here says, a nuclear wild card on a dangerous road to Armageddon. And this is true. And let's just talk about a couple of the highlights in this. They're talking about a war starting in the Middle East. And it says the destruction would be wholesale. Iran would target all the bases we have in Iraq and Syria, with around 1,000 Americans on those bases. It also says that it would shut down 2 to 3 million barrels a day of oil. It talks about how it says the U.S. military, as it stands right now, may not be adequately prepared for such a conflict. The enemy has new weapons systems and capabilities. It talks about a nuclear wild card here. It talks about how it says, in the midst of all this, a question arises: how will a war with Iran affect Americans' domestic policy? And it also says that Hezbollah has a very large operation in Mexico. Oh, I didn't know that until I read this article. And there could no doubt, he says, be many, many, many Hezbollah agents inside the United States. He says we can only begin to imagine the kind of trouble that they could cause. We're on the edge of something monstrous, guys, right now, and it's just like a little bit of a quiet before the storm. If something doesn't break in all this, if it just continues down this road, the bridge is out. I can't begin to emphasize it enough. So we got Israeli captives are being released. They described it as hell in the attack that they received, but they said they were treated well in Gaza. They freed an 85-year-old, I can't pronounce her name, an elderly woman, on humanitarian grounds on Monday. She doesn't look real well. Maybe she has health issues, and so they're releasing a few elderly people in this ongoing war that's happening right now in and around Israel. Like I said, this is a powder. This war is a worse powder keg than even. And this is why it's in the news right now, and you don't hear so much about the war that's going on over in Ukraine, which is also a powder keg as well, that pits East against West. Prepare yourselves. That's all I can say. Before the masses finally get scared, which probably will happen pretty soon, and then they all start prepping. Everybody starts prepping. Everybody starts getting scared. They say that there is a certain point where even a person that is not well, doesn't keep up with the news, doesn't look into these things, where they hear it from their friends. Their friends say, "Did you hear? Did you hear? We just went to war with X." I'm not going to say who, but and now that might go nuclear tomorrow, and then then their ears perk up. They're like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?" They finally wake up, and then they go and they check it out. They check it out and they say, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know this was happening." When everybody starts to find out what's really going on and how this situation's so dangerous, then maybe it's to the point where the panic begins. At some point, I can tell you guys, at some point, panic will begin in this kind of situation. In the situations that are evolving. At some point. Maybe in the not too distant future. The population in general will panic. So we're looking at silver price today at $22.88. It's down 7 cents. These are playing that game I told you about where they push it up to about 23, 24 bucks. And then they knock it back down to 21 and change. And then it bounces back again. And it's been doing that. They've been keeping doing that for the last period of time. And so it's just more of the same for now. This is going to break free in the end. It's going to break free. But it might be that the situation in the world has deteriorated to the point where this stuff finally breaks free in a big way. You might not like the look of the world that we're in. This stuff has been awful stubborn at staying down in price for years now. Talk about stubborn. It's the most stubborn thing I've ever seen in my life. It just won't move. If this was a bowel movement, by gosh, you would end up having to go to the hospital because it just would turn into a rock. It's a turd. How else can I put it? This thing has been a turd, a real turd. But I think that when it finally goes, it's going to go with such a shot. It's going to be unbelievable when it finally goes because it's been held back for so long. So gold's at 1970. Now let's take a look at crypto. Crypto is starting to show signs that it possibly is going into a bull market. It's at 33,895 for Bitcoin today. So we were like 30,000 yesterday, so it's gained like 4,000 bucks overnight. Ethereum's at 1786, and it's going up. XRP's at 55.8 cents, so XRP is making one of the biggest climbs of them all. XRP's doing really well right now. Then let's take a look now at the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It's up 157 points at 33,093. This market really has been a turd too. It hasn't went anywhere for ages. It's been hovering in around. It made those tops around 36,000. And then it's backed away from it, and it's just been going along like this. But meanwhile, we got inflation. So these dollars that are represented in the stock market here have been inflating their value away since the stock market hasn't moved in over a year. Hasn't really moved. It's been just going along. Well, let's take a look. 5-year here. 5-year chart. I mean, it was higher way back here in 2021, or just as high. We're right at the exact same level we were in the third month of 2021. That's a long stretch along there. We haven't went anywhere. But what has happened to our dollar since early 2021? I'd say it's lost 50% of its value for purchasing. You got to pay almost double what you did back in the third month of 2021. At least half again more. So that means that half again of what the stock market. So in order to be the same purchasing power as the money invested in the stock market back in 2021, right now, you'd have to have a stock market would be around 40,000 or higher. I mean 42,000. Determined in dollars, this stock market is soon not going to be overvalued, and hyperinflating currencies, your stock market has to go up if your currency's hyperinflating. Now, our currency isn't hyperinflating yet, but if it does, and it very possibly will, because there's trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars being kept outside the country. 10 times as much money outside the country as there is in. So for every dollar you got in your pocket, there's $10 floating around in the economy out in the world out there. And those dollars are getting ready to start flooding back home again. And as all those dollars start to flood back home again, and the dollar's not being used for oil trade any longer, so the demand for them's gone, this market's going to have to go past 40,000. It's going to have to shoot up. There's no choice in it, ultimately. But, you know, we're working with two things happening here simultaneously. Deflationary pressures, because the Fed is trying to artificially suck up all this liquidity that they created, but still all this liquidity exists offshore. Tons and tons and tons of it that's about ready to come flooding back in. So we got two things happening simultaneously, and it's almost like watching somebody on the beach building sandcastles. And yeah, they got a backhoe and they're building the biggest sandcastles you ever seen, but they're not going to stop the tide. But for the present time, they're seemingly winning on this construction project. That's the Fed, you know. I mean, maybe that wasn't the greatest analogy in the world, but you get the point. Is there's two things happening at once. Also makes it difficult to forecast things, but ultimately, I know where all of this is going, because the Fed cannot continue with this, what they're doing. They're going to screw up, and something's going to really break big within the system. And then they're going to have to backtrack. And when they do, you know, at the same time, that might be what these guys are waiting for that's holding all these dollars outside the U.S. You ever think of that? They're watching the system too, and they might be saying to themselves, because they want to hurt us. Financially, they want to hurt us, and they want to hurt us with really hurt us. They want to establish themselves as the next world power. They might be sitting back there saying, we're holding all these dollars. Let's just wait until the Fed turns and changes direction, and then we're going to dump it all and make them have an instantaneous hyperinflate. So what's the Fed going to do if a whole bunch of stuff breaks? Like, say, 10 banks, big banks, were to start to go down. Or gosh knows, maybe it's in the debt market, or something breaks, big breaks, and they have to fix it. because maybe it's freezing up credit or whatever within the system, and then all this money's dumped back into the system from these forces out there who want to take us down. They're out there planning. They're planning every minute of every day with one objective: to establish themselves and destroy the existing world order. And they're not on our side. They're working to make it for them, not for us. Let's take a look here at how did I get talking about that anyway? So let's move on. Let's take a look here at crude oil, 83.54. It's down $1.95. Now, as far as bonds and rates go today, we're not seeing much movement today, but a little bit. The U.S. 30-year has fell 1.4 basis points, and the U.S. 10-year has fell marginally 1/5 of 1 basis point at 48.3. No, 4.83 on the U.S. 10-year, and the 30 years at 4.97. And taking a look at the U.S. dollar index today, it's 106.19, and it's climbing today. Now see, this is it. This is part of it right here. See, the dollar still going, staying strong. As long as the Fed continues to do what they're doing, and the system is going to be, dollars are going to be in demand. But they can't continue doing this. They are taking, bit by bit, they're taking the whole economy down to do it. But they're forced to do it because they know that the enemies are at the gate. And the enemies have their eye on destroying the dollar. And so they have to try to support the dollar and keep it in position. But they can't do this for very long. It's impossible. If you saw a guy hanging onto a bar, and he's hanging out over the edge of a building, he can do it for a minute or two. But you know what's going to happen in the end. That's the Fed right now. I'm watching them, and they're hanging on the bar. And yeah, they're doing it right now. They're hanging on. But I know what inevitably is going to happen, and this is what the enemy's waiting for. They're waiting for it to happen. And then they're going to pile on all the money that they're holding outside the country. That's probably what they'll do, is dump it all simultaneously. As soon as the Fed lets go of the bar and they drop, they'll probably dump all the money that they're holding outside, all their bonds, everything, just dump. Probably they'll buy gold and silver with it all and ruin that market too for the ones who are trying to keep the price suppressed. Everything could change. When that happens, everything could change in one day. Everything for the gold and silver markets could entirely change, and everything for the dollar could entirely change in one day. And that day might not be that far away. Thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. And have a great afternoon, guys. Bye-bye.